My name is Naomi Hart, 36 years old. The day my daughter told me what happened, snow was falling soft and quiet, like the world didn't know a storm was about to rip through my family and rearrange it permanently. We were standing at the trunk of our car outside my parents' place. 5 days of family Christmas were finally over. Ava had her little rolling suitcase in one hand and her stuffed fox in the other, its fur so worn the nose was barely there anymore. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, but there was something else in her face. A slack kind of tired that didn't look like too much sugar or not enough sleep. The tired you expect after a week with cousins comes with laughter and stories. This looked like the kind that comes with holding something in. I kissed her forehead, buckled her into the back seat, and told her, "Home in 20 minutes, bug," then pajamas and hot chocolate. She nodded, eyes already drifting to the window, the fox tucked under her chin like a shield. I climbed into the passenger seat while my husband, Matt, started the engine. We pulled away from the curb, Christmas lights blurring into soft halos in the side mirrors. I was mid-sentence, telling him about the leftover ham my mom promised to send home with us, when Ava's voice slipped into the quiet. Auntie told me to stay in the parking lot while they went to the toy store. She said it so softly, I almost thought I'd imagined it. I turned down the radio. "What did you say, honey?" She didn't look at me in the rear-view mirror. She kept her eyes on the dark line of trees sliding past outside, fingers gripping the fox a little too tightly. "They went to the toy store," she repeated. "Auntie Claire and the boys. She said I had to stay in the car." Something cold slid down my spine. Matt glanced at me, brow furrowing, but kept his eyes on the road. "When was this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She frowned, thinking. "The day we had pizza, after the play place." "Wednesday." I pictured it. My mom on the phone telling me all the kids were out, that Claire took them all to the indoor playground. Isn't she amazing? "What happened?" I asked. "They said they'd be quick," Ava said, "so I stayed in my seat. I played games on my tablet for a long time. Then it got dark. My tablet died. I got cold." Her voice dropped. "I didn't want to open the door. I thought maybe they forgot." My throat closed. Matt's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Did you tell Auntie you were cold?" I asked, every word thrumming with restrained panic. She shook her head. "They weren't there. They were in the store. I could see the lights." She hesitated, then added, barely above a whisper, "She said not to tell you or it would ruin Christmas." That was the moment. That was the instant everything in me snapped and reformed into something sharp. In my mind, I saw it clear as a movie. My 7-year-old sitting alone in a parked car, breath fogging the window, watching strangers walk past while the sky turned from gray to black. Her tablet screen dimming to nothing, her fingers getting numb. Her aunt wandering through toy aisles under fluorescent lights, picking out presents for her own kids. For 4 hours, my child sat alone in the dark while my sister pretended she was handling it. I didn't scream. Not at Ava, not at Matt, not then. I turned slowly to my husband and said, "Drive to their house." "Naomi, he started. "Now," I said. He didn't argue. The car turned instead of heading toward home. The silence between us thickened. I could feel my entire body vibrating, not from sobs, but from something deeper. Rage and terror twisted together so tightly I could barely breathe. My fingers kept curling and uncurling in my lap. My jaw throbbed from how hard I was clenching it. There was a hot, burning pressure building behind my eyes, but I forced it down. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of Claire's house. It was the kind of house you'd find on the cover of a holiday magazine. White lights lining the porch, a wreath on the red front door, fake snow dusted along the windowsills. You could hear music from inside, the faint clink of plates and the rise and fall of laughter. Her boys' voices floated through the front window. "Mom, where's the Nerf gun?" "Not that one, the mega one." I unbuckled my seatbelt before Matt had even fully put the car in park. "Stay here with Ava," I said. He nodded once. I didn't knock. I opened the front door and walked in like I paid the mortgage. The warmth of the house hit me. Smells of cinnamon and sugar and pine all mixing into something that, 24 hours ago, might have felt like home. Now it just made my skin crawl. My mom was in the kitchen, icing cupcakes with red and green frosting. My dad was in his recliner, half asleep, hand loose around a mug of cider. Claire was sprawled on the couch, legs up, wearing those stupid fuzzy socks she buys in bulk after Halloween. Her husband, Ryan, was at the counter pouring more cider into mugs while Christmas music played too loudly from the living room speaker. Claire looked up and smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey, you're early," she said. "We weren't expecting." I crossed the room in 3 strides. I didn't think, I moved. My hand shot out, grabbed her messy blonde bun, and yanked her off the couch. Hard. She shrieked as her legs slid out from under her. One of the mugs on the coffee table tipped and shattered on the rug, cider splashing up onto the sofa. My mom gasped. My dad jolted upright with a confused, "What on earth?" Claire hit her knees on the hardwood before she even understood what had happened. I didn't give her time. My palm cracked across her face so loudly the music might as well have shut off on its own. The sound ricocheted around the room like a gunshot. Claire crumpled onto her hip, hand flying to her cheek, eyes wide. "Naomi!" my mom screamed. The tray of cupcakes slipped from her hands and clanged onto the tile, frosting smearing across the floor in red and green streaks. Ryan took a step toward me. Matt stepped in front of him, shoulders squared. "Don't," my husband said, low and steady. Ryan froze, hands half raised, torn between his wife and the realization he had no idea what was actually happening. My dad pushed himself out of the recliner, face pale, voice rough. "Naomi, what the hell is going on?" I could hear my own breathing, fast, ragged, in my ears. Claire stared up at me from the floor, cheeks flaming, eyes flashing with embarrassment more than fear. Her hand was still pressed to the side of her face where my palm had landed, fingers trembling. "Have you lost your mind?" she snapped, voice shaking. "For hours," I said. The room stilled. "You left my daughter," I continued, each word deliberate, "in a freezing car, for 4 hours." My mom's mouth dropped open. The tray she'd dropped lay forgotten at her feet. My dad's eyes darted from my face to Claire's, searching for some sign this was a joke. It wasn't. Claire blinked, tried to gather what was left of her dignity. "Oh my God, calm down," she scoffed weakly, pushing herself upright. She was fine. Matt's hand tightened on my arm, grounding me. I didn't move toward her again, but my body wanted to. "She was in the car," Claire continued, brushing crumbs off her leggings, trying to make it sound matter-of-fact. "She had her tablet. I cracked a window. It wasn't that cold, Naomi. We weren't gone that long." "She is 7, I said, in December, in a parking lot." Claire rolled her eyes, but it didn't land the way she hoped. "You're being dramatic. It wasn't 4 hours, maybe 2. I checked on her when we came out of the first store. She didn't even cry." I looked at my mom. "Did you know?" Her eyes filled instantly with tears. She shook her head, horrified. "No. Oh God, no. I thought she took all the kids to the play place. That's what she told us. I would never—" My dad's voice cut through. It sounded strange, slower, like it hurt to move his mouth around the words. "Claire," he said, "is this true?" She hesitated, then shrugged, that same careless little shrug she'd used her whole life. "I mean, technically, but nothing happened. Ava's fine. She's not some helpless baby." That was her defense. She wasn't a baby. As if that made it okay. Behind me, I sensed movement. I turned. Ava was standing in the hallway, small and still, stuffed fox tucked under her arm. She looked at me, then at her aunt, then at my parents. "You told her to lie to me," I said slowly, turning back to Claire. "You told her if she said anything, she'd ruin Christmas." Claire's mouth twitched. "I just didn't want you to freak out over nothing. You always overreact to everything." Before I could answer, her oldest, Eli, bounded into the room, oblivious to the tension, a big plastic toy store bag dragging along the floor behind him. "Mom, look what I found. This is the one we got after the pizza place, remember? The day Ava had to stay in the car because you said she would complain too much." He stopped dead when he realized no one was breathing. Claire's face went bone white. My mom took a stumbling step backward, one hand flying to her mouth. My dad looked at Ava again, really seeing her now, as if the shape of her shoulders and the way she clutched that fox told him everything he needed to know. He walked over and knelt in front of her. "Honey," he said gently, voice breaking, "how long were you in the car that day?" Ava looked at him, then at me. Then she lifted one small hand and held up 4 fingers. That was it. 4 fingers, 4 hours. 4 lifetimes of trust snapped in the space between us. No one spoke. Not Claire, not my parents, not even Eli. The room was so quiet I could hear the soft whir of the heater and the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Matt finally broke the silence. "Call her godmother," he said quietly in my ear. "She's not staying here tonight." I nodded. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look at Claire again. We turned, walked Ava back out into the cold, and left without another word. As we stepped onto the porch, I heard my mother behind us, voice shaking as she said my sister's full name, first, middle, and last. In that tone every child recognizes as the sound of a line being crossed. For once, Claire didn't have anything smart to say back. I didn't say anything to Ava as we walked back to the car, just wrapped my arm around her shoulders and kept my steps slow so she didn't have to hurry. The night felt colder than it had when we arrived. The air had that sharp edge December gets when it's deciding whether to snow again. "Are we going home?" she asked, voice small. "Almost," I said. "We're making a stop first." Her godmother, Lena, lived 10 minutes away. When we pulled into her driveway, Ava's face relaxed a fraction. She adored Lena. I could see the way her shoulders dropped when she recognized the porch light. Lena opened the door before we even knocked. One look at Ava's face and mine, and she didn't ask a single question. She stepped aside, arms already opening. "You're staying with me tonight, kiddo," she said gently. "I've got popcorn and cartoons." Ava didn't cry. She didn't cling to me. She just nodded, walked inside, and sat on Lena's couch, pulling a blanket over her legs. As Lena flicked on Ava's favorite cartoon, my daughter's expression smoothed into something almost normal. That, more than anything, gutted me. She was used to pretending nothing had happened. Lena came back to the door, eyes hard. "Whatever it is," she said quietly, "we'll talk later. Go home. Take care of yourself." I nodded, throat too tight to answer, and we drove away. The ride home was silent. The neighborhoods we passed were doing their best to look like joy itself. Every porch had some version of festivity. Strings of lights, inflatable snowmen, glowing reindeer. Behind windows, I could see glimpses of families around tables, TV glow flickering against walls, silhouettes leaning toward each other in easy conversation. Inside our car, there was none of that, just the weight of something broken sitting between us like a third passenger. When we walked into our house, I didn't take off my coat. I went straight to the kitchen, pulled my laptop from the counter, and opened it with hands that only shook a little. Our joint bank accounts appeared on the screen. The familiar list of numbers and balances, financial fingerprints of a life I'd built to be safe. At the bottom of the list was one I'd almost forgotten how much I resented. The joint account I'd opened with Claire 3 years ago when she was trying to get back on her feet. She'd never really gotten back on anything. I watched the transaction history scroll by like a confession. Phone bills, 2 months of rent, car insurance, emergency groceries, last-minute birthday party deposits, Christmas presents for her boys when she didn't want them to feel the stress. Every "I'll pay you back next week" sat there as a line item with no corresponding credit. I moved my cursor to the transfer button. My portion slid out with a few keystrokes, my money hopping from a space where it could be inhaled by her need into an account with my name and my name only. Then I froze the joint account and requested paperwork to remove myself entirely. 10 minutes. 3 years of financial enabling. One quiet click to end it. I stared at the confirmation screen for a long time afterward, the cursor blinking at the edge of the page like it was waiting to see if I'd regret it. I didn't. Matt came into the kitchen and sat beside me. He didn't ask what I was doing. His eyes skimmed the screen once, and that was enough. "Good," he said softly. "About time." We didn't sleep that night. I tried. I lay in bed, eyes closed, listening to the hum of the heater and the occasional car passing outside. But every time my mind drifted, it went back to the image of Ava curled up in the back seat, knees tucked to her chest, Fox pressed to her face, watching the toy store doors and wondering if someone was going to open them with her name on their lips. She hadn't cried, Claire said, as if not crying meant she hadn't been scared. No one deserves that, least of all from the people they're supposed to be safest with. By morning, the calls started. First, my mom. 4 missed calls in a row, then a voicemail, her voice tight with panic. "Naomi, call me back, please. We need to talk about last night. This has gone too far." Then my dad. One short message in that low, steady tone he used when something serious had happened. "We need to talk. It's about Claire." I let both go unanswered. The coffee maker gurgled behind me, filling the kitchen with the smell of fresh brew. I poured a mug, added cream, sat at the table, and stared at my phone. It kept buzzing against the wood like it was trying to crawl away. Then came the texts. Claire, of course, didn't bother with voicemails. She went straight into typed outrage. "You made me look like a monster in front of my kids. Ava is fine. You're overreacting like always. Do you even understand how much pressure I'm under? You think you're perfect? You left her with me. Maybe look in the mirror before judging me." I read them all. Every line was a mix of rage and self-pity, no space for guilt, no room for understanding. "She really thinks she's the victim," Matt said, reading over my shoulder. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete the messages. I left them there on the screen, a permanent reminder of who she became when the mask slipped. Around noon, my mom called again. This time I answered. We didn't exchange pleasantries. We know everything, she said immediately, her words rushing together. Claire came clean, sort of. Eli said something first. Then Ava told us the rest. I closed my eyes for a second. What did Claire say? I asked. She said she just wanted to enjoy a few hours with her boys without babysitting someone else's kid, my mom said, voice shaking. She said she thought it would be fine, and when she realized how long it had been, she panicked. She kept trying to minimize it, but she trailed off. That's her truth, I said blandly. Mine is simpler. I took a breath, felt how steady it was. I'm cutting her off. There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end. No more gifts, I continued. No more bills, no more money, no more favors. I already closed the account. She's on her own from now on. I braced myself for the old script, for my mother to launch into a speech about forgiveness, about how family helps family, about how I was being cruel. She didn't. I don't know what happened to her, my mom said instead, her voice suddenly small. We raised you both the same. I don't know how she got like this. I stared out the window as a neighbor scraped ice off their windshield. The metal on glass sound faint but grating. She didn't get like this yesterday, I said. She's been like this for years. You just didn't want to see it. My mom didn't argue, not like she used to. There was no soft focus excuse. No, Claire's just under a lot of stress. No, she didn't mean it. Instead, after a long pause, she said quietly, We're not excusing this. Your father, he's angrier than I've ever seen him. Good, I thought. Finally. When we hung up, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired, bone-deep tired from carrying a version of my sister that only ever existed in my parents' heads. That afternoon, I went through every closet in the house, every shopping bag marked with her boys' names, every present I'd carefully picked out. The Lego sets, the board games, the toy lightsabers, the matching pajamas I'd stayed up late to order so all the cousins could have a cute photo. All of it went into the trunk of my car. At the store, the clerk didn't blink at the pile of returns. What couldn't be taken back, I drove straight to a donation center. The volunteer there smiled when she saw the toys. Some kids are going to have a great surprise, she said. Good, I thought. Better them. Even the extra gloves I'd picked up for Claire went into the donation bin. I remembered her complaining last year that hers always went missing, and how I'd made a mental note to fix that for her. That had been my default setting, always thinking ahead, always covering the gaps for someone who treated my effort like air. No more. That night, Ava came home. We made spaghetti and garlic bread. We ate in our pajamas at the table, sauce on our chins, no expectation of perfect conversation. We curled up on the couch and watched The Grinch for the 100th time. She laughed at the same parts, the sound light and real. She didn't mention her aunt once. She didn't need to. The universe, however, wasn't done with us yet. Because 2 days later, day after Christmas, when the wrapping paper in most houses is still scattered like confetti and the leftovers are just starting to disappear, there was a knock at the door. Matt glanced out the front window, then came back into the living room. They're here, he said. I knew exactly who he meant. I stood up, heart steady, and opened the door. My parents stood on the porch, and behind them, standing in the cold without a coat, holding a single wrinkled gift in both hands, like it was a lifeline, was Claire. I didn't say anything. But I did something I'd never done before. I stepped aside just enough for my parents and lifted my hand between them and my sister. Come in, I said to Mom and Dad. Then, looking straight at Claire, I added, only them. She froze on the doormat, the cold air swirling around her, the engine of her car still idling at the curb behind her, like it wasn't sure whether to wait or cut and run. My parents walked inside slowly, almost cautiously, as if the air in our living room had a different weight than it used to. I closed the door behind them, but left Claire standing outside. The lock clicked. She was close enough to hear it. My mom stood in the entryway, wringing her hands. My dad hovered behind her, stiff, silent, eyes tired. They didn't sit. They didn't take off their coats. They were waiting to see which direction this moment would tilt. I didn't offer tea. I didn't say Merry Christmas. I didn't pretend anything was normal. It wasn't. Finally, my mom spoke. She's not doing well. The understatement hit the room like a dull thud. She's not sleeping, she continued. She hasn't eaten properly in days. She keeps pacing the house, mumbling about how she ruined everything. My dad added quietly, she wants to apologize. She's just scared. I let their words echo for a moment. You think she's scared of me? I asked. My dad shifted uneasily. She's scared of how far this has gone. A humorless breath escaped me. You think I took it too far? No, he said quickly. That's not what I meant. Really? I stepped closer. Because when I confronted Claire, you both acted like you'd been hit by a truck. But tell me, why is it more shocking that I hit her than that she abandoned my child in a freezing car? My mother flinched. You raised us both, I said, softer, but no less sharp. So tell me, who taught Claire that if she ignored the consequences of her actions long enough, someone else would clean it up? My mom sat down on the edge of the couch, covering her face with both hands. We yelled at her, she whispered. I blinked. We yelled at her for 2 hours, she said. Your father, he shouted louder than I've ever heard him shout. Dad stiffened beside her, jaw tight. She tried to explain, Mom continued, tried to minimize it, but when we kept pressing, she broke. She kept saying she didn't want to be like this. She just wanted to be seen as capable. Capable. The same word Claire had used her entire life, while expecting the rest of us to do the actual work of adulthood. She wants the praise of responsibility, I said, not the responsibility itself. Mom nodded helplessly. She kept crying. Why can't anyone understand how hard it is for me? Hard for her. The words tasted like iron in my mouth. That's not remorse, I muttered. That's self-pity dressed up as regret. Before either of them could respond, the doorbell rang. We all turned at the same time. I opened the door. Claire had stepped closer, almost timidly, the crumpled gift held tight against her chest. Wet snow flecked her eyelashes. Her hair was unbrushed, the blonde strands darkened at the ends from melting flakes. Her cheeks were blotchy, either from wind or crying, probably both. She looked small. I didn't think you'd actually shut me out, she said. I leaned against the doorframe. You're not coming inside. She swallowed, eyes darting over my shoulder toward our parents. Can we just talk, please? You can talk right here, I replied. Her fingers tightened on the gift. I got this for Ava before everything happened. It's not a bribe. I just wanted to show... I didn't take it. Her eyes flickered with something like desperation. Naomi, I know I messed up, but this is getting out of control. You're freezing accounts, returning presents. My parents are in there choosing sides. You've never shut me out before. That's the problem, I said. She blinked rapidly, confusion fluttering beneath her voice. I lost my job last week. Silence cracked like thin ice. I hadn't expected that. I didn't want the boys to feel it, she continued quickly. So I took them to the mall. I didn't want them to see me falling apart. I needed them to think everything was okay, normal. I frowned. What does this have to do with Ava being abandoned in a car? I panicked, she said, voice cracking. I thought we'd be in the store 5 minutes. Then it was 20, then 40. Then I told myself you'd freak out if I called. Then I didn't know how to fix it. And when you didn't answer your phone that day... I didn't get any calls from you, I said sharply. She froze. And I knew instantly. She had never intended to call. You could have told me you lost your job, I said quietly. You could have told me you were scared. You could have told me anything. She stared down at her soaked shoes. You didn't tell me, I continued, because you didn't want to admit you needed help. So instead you decided my daughter's safety was expendable. Tears spilled over her cheeks. You didn't forget her, Claire. You made a choice. I know, she whispered. No, I said, you don't. I stepped closer until the cold between us felt sharp enough to draw blood. You told my child to lie to me. Claire's shoulders shook. I didn't want her to think she ruined Christmas. A 7-year-old, I said, voice low. You put guilt on her tiny shoulders because you were scared of me being disappointed. The snow thickened around us. Behind me, through the window, I saw Mom pressing a hand to her face. Dad stood motionless. Claire wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. I'm trying, okay? I really am. I know I'm not good at this. I know I mess up, but I'm trying. For who? I asked. She looked up, startled. What? For who, Claire? Are you trying for Ava or for yourself? For the boys? For Mom? For Dad? For the image of being the fun mom? The sister who always looks like she's got it together? Or are you trying so you can feel better without actually doing better? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came. I'm not giving you a script, I said. I'm telling you the truth. The only apology that matters is the one you make without excuses. I pointed to the crushed gift still clutched in her hands. And that isn't it. She looked at it like she was seeing it for the first time. I stepped back. Go home. Don't come back until you can apologize to Ava without blaming anyone. Not stress, not exhaustion, not finances, not me. She froze. Then, for the first time since childhood, she didn't argue. She walked away slowly, like her legs were moving through water. When she reached the driveway, she leaned into the car, exchanged a few urgent words with someone inside, then slammed the door. The car drove off without her. Claire stayed behind, standing on the sidewalk, alone, snow falling heavier now, gift still in her hands. I closed the door. Inside, the silence felt different. Not tense, not anxious. Just honest. My parents sat on the couch, neither speaking. I poured tea for them both. They didn't drink it. They just held the warmth in their palms. For 15 minutes, no one said a word. Outside, through the window pane, Claire curled up on the curb, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tight around herself, head bowed, like she wasn't sure how she'd ended up exactly where she belonged, alone with the consequences. And for the first time in her life, we didn't rush to rescue her. Claire stayed on that curb far longer than I ever expected. At first, I assumed it was a performance. She'd always been good at those. Big dramatic gestures meant to tug heartstrings and blur accountability. Sit in the cold, look pitiful, hope someone cracks the door open with, "Okay, fine, come inside, let's talk." I'd seen this cycle 100 times, but 20 minutes passed, then 30, and she didn't move. She didn't knock again. She didn't call. She didn't pace angrily. She didn't stomp back to her car. She just sat. Snowflakes landed in her hair, melting into thin, wet streaks down her shoulders. She kept her arms wrapped around herself, fingers digging into her sleeves, the cheap foil wrapping of the gift crinkling every time she shivered. The corner of the box had softened from the damp, sagging like a collapsed lung. She looked less like a manipulative adult woman and more like a child who'd missed the bus and didn't know who to call. My mom watched from the couch, her eyes flicking toward the window every few seconds. Her tea sat cooling in her lap, untouched. "She's going to get frostbite," Mom murmured. "So did Ava," I said without turning my head. The words hit like a slap. Mom flinched. This time she didn't defend Claire, didn't offer some tender justification, didn't try to balance the scales with a soft, "She didn't mean it." She just inhaled shakily and whispered, "I know." My dad was quiet, too quiet. His hands were clasped together, knuckles white, jaw tight. He'd always been steady, composed, rarely showing emotion, but tonight his silence was jagged. After several long moments, he said, "I yelled at her." I looked up sharply. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor, the words heavy. "That night," he continued, "after you left, I yelled at her. I told her she had no business watching someone else's child if she couldn't even protect her own. I told her I was ashamed." The room went still. Ashamed wasn't a word my father used. Not in anger, not in annoyance, not ever. It was a word reserved for seismic wrongdoing. Mom nodded slowly, confirming it. "She cried for 2 hours," she whispered. "Said she didn't want to be like this. Said she just wanted people to see her as capable, like you." That stunned me. Like me? Claire had always been openly jealous of my stability, my calm, my ability to keep life together without falling apart at every inconvenience. I'd known she resented it, but hearing she wanted to be seen that way made something deep in me ache. Except, wanting to look responsible is not the same as being responsible. "You raised her to believe she never had to face consequences," I said quietly. "And the first time she does, she doesn't know what to do." Neither of them argued. That was new too. After a long silence, Mom stood, wrapped her arms around herself, and said, "We should go." I nodded and walked them to the door. As I opened it, the cold rushed in, and Claire saw us through the window. She scrambled to her feet, eyes darting between us, hope flickering dimly. My parents walked past her toward their car. She said something, too soft for me to hear through the glass, but they didn't stop. My dad climbed into the driver's seat. Mom hesitated for a heartbeat, looked at Claire, then got into the passenger seat and shut the door. Their car pulled away, taillights glowing red against the snow. Claire remained on the curb, alone. The gift sagged in her hands, the foil tearing along the crease. I closed the door. She didn't leave right away. Through the window, I saw her pacing in small circles on the sidewalk, rubbing her arms as if friction could warm her. Every few seconds, she glanced at the door, not with entitlement this time, but with a kind of lost confusion. She looked like someone who'd placed all her chips on a hand she finally realized she couldn't win. After a while, I couldn't watch anymore, not out of pity, out of exhaustion. I moved away from the window, made hot cocoa for Ava, lit a candle on the counter, and swept the kitchen floor just to keep my hands busy. Because when someone finally runs out of chances, you don't stand there analyzing the ruins. You keep living. You let time absorb the shock of it, and you stop waiting for them to suddenly become someone they've never been. Eventually, the pacing stopped. I glanced out the window and Claire was gone. The only evidence she'd been there was the damp patch she left behind in the snow, and the gift sitting upright on our porch like a discarded offering. The paper had turned to mush. Whatever was inside had swollen, misshapen by melted snow. I left it there. Ava didn't ask about it. She never mentioned her aunt again. The next morning, I scooped it up with a snow shovel and dumped it straight into the trash bin. No ceremony, no curiosity, just garbage where it belonged. A week passed. Life resumed its rhythms. Ava slept better. Her shoulders loosened. She laughed again, really laughed, curling in a blanket next to her godmother's daughter during a sleepover, eating microwave popcorn like nothing in the world could hurt her. That sound was medicine. For the first time in months, my house felt peaceful, not the fragile peace of waiting for the next Claire crisis, a real one. And then, out of nowhere, I got a text from an unknown number. No greeting, no apology, just, "I'm trying. Please don't give up on me." I stared at it for a long moment. Claire had always treated apologies like fire extinguishers. Break glass only when the flames were too big to ignore, then expect everyone to pretend the fire never happened. Not this time. I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. I just let the silence speak. Months later, a letter appeared in our mailbox. No return address, no postage stamp, just my name in Claire's shaky handwriting. I held it for 5 minutes, debating. I didn't need to open it. I already knew what was inside. Explanations without accountability, tears without change, words meant to soften memory, not repair damage. I held it over the sink, struck a match, and watched the paper curl, blacken, and collapse into ash. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Because forgiveness doesn't come from crying on a curb or delivering a soggy gift or sending a vague text about trying. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, takes humility, consistency, repair, time, accountability. Claire hadn't done the work. She had just performed the fall, and I didn't owe her the applause. So no, I never forgave her. Not because I'm cruel, not because I enjoy holding grudges, but because she never truly asked to be forgiven. She only asked to be let back in. And that door? It stayed closed,